Hmm.
Like, I don't need to have, like, this sort of symbolic gesture between the two of them that really kind of comes from nowhere.
No, I agree. It was totally all over the place, lots of little nonsense, and it didn't really build up any character that much on their own, aside from introducing the new ones, who themselves aren't that interesting. They're just very passionate. So, like the deal that Kobaragi offers when the first day he joins the club, he says, once we do the first year race, if me and Donchiku get first and second, he'll put us on the team. And then Teshima just says, okay. Even though they're the first two members who've joined, and he's never seen them ride before, he just says, okay, I'll put you both on the team if you get first and second. Like, so obviously that says to me that they won't get first and second. They can't, because we already have 5 of the 6 members who have to be on it. So is this going to be next episode where Teshima has some all-knowing monologue where he says, ha ha ha, I knew Sugimoto had it in him and he was going to pull ahead. There was never any risk of anyone else getting first place. Yeah.
What I could see possibly happening is maybe only one of them gets first. Like, one of them will get first, but Sugimoto will throw a wrench in their plans. But that's also going to be weird, because the promise was so that if they get first and second place, so are they just going to give it to the first place guy and just sort of throw Sugimoto to the curb then?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it would be kind of weird if Sugimoto does actually end up on the team, because then they don't introduce any new characters to the Inner High squad.
Right.
So I have to assume... My assumption, honestly, is that there's some secret first year who they haven't introduced yet who's going to surprise everybody. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. At the same time, the series is never been good about setting up, like, mystery characters like that. Like, I mean, let me put it like this. They could have easily done something like that during the Inter-High, and it was basically all about Hitotsuji and then the entire Hakone team.
Well, yeah,
they did have that one...
They tried to have the evil racer who manipulated the crowds, but then he just lost and wasn't that big a deal at the end.
Yeah, basically, it was only like a couple episodes. It wasn't really like he wasn't really like a major villain.
Yeah, I mean, we can say that because we can't even remember his name.
Yeah, pretty much. He was not an important character, and so that's kind of why I'm hesitant to say
that they'll do something interesting.
Yeah, kinda, a little bit.
All right, well, I guess we'll take it as a comment.
Yeah, real quick, just one. I just want to end on at least a positive note with it. I did get a good chuckle about the joke with Anoda, who was apparently he was accidentally being like an intimidating second year.
Oh yeah.
I did get a couple laughs out of the fact that every time he was trying to be encouraging and you know, like kind-hearted, he always came off as exceedingly confrontational.
Well, yeah, he doesn't know how to be a senpai. So,
right. I mean, it's a cheap gag, but you know, I got a few laughs out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, the part of it that made sense to me was that because he was the national champion, intimidated by him. Because you have to imagine a lot of these people were in that school because they won the Inter High.
Right.
So they're super intimidated by Anoda anyway.
Right, exactly. So, I thought that aspect was at least a little interesting, but, you know, it's still not much. But if you want to talk about something interesting, why don't we talk about March Comes In Like a Lion?
Alright. Decent. This is March Comes In Like a Lion, episode 21. The focus here is, again, on Shimada. The first half of the episode has Shimada, Rei, and Mikaido going to Yamagata, Shimada's hometown, for a shogi tournament / festival that I guess has been going on for several years. Shimada, of course, is the guest of honor, and he's trying to get out of the funk. He still goes into it pretty depressed and ashamed about getting swept out of the Lion King tournament. But he goes anyway. Where Kaido and another character have they play a shogi match, but for what people know it as be decent. And then a bunch of the pro shogi players, including Shimada, do a group shogi competition against. It comes out that Shimada had actually set up a shogi club early in town because they were getting snowed in, not getting supplies, not having community, and he's gone out of his way to support them and pay for their groceries. And so Ray learns a lot of this through the reporter, and we just sit around and talk about who Shimada is, and at the end of that section, folks from Shimada's hometown reassure him that it doesn't matter that he lost, that they'll always be there, they'll always support him, and he doesn't need to feel so much pressure to rush into being the second half of the episode is focused on the sisters and their grandfather, who have an extended debate about what the appropriate filling would be for a new Japanese pastry. For the immediate future, look forward to Matt's summary of Yao Pei.
Alright, cool beans. Alright, so in this episode, we find Sugimoto is keeping pace with Danchiku and Kokuragi. And we find out that apparently Sugimoto has a deep bond with Maizumi, and his goal is that he wants to be the one to push, give Maizumi the push to the final goal. Like the final stretch of land. Sure.
For the for the inter-high, not for
yes, for the inter-high. Just not for just any race, but... anyway, so we get one of the first real strategies I've seen in the series thus far, with Sugimoto trying to kind of play a mind game with Danchiku and Kokuragi by doing like a big sprint, like a big breakaway from them. And he's basically counting on he was basically counting on them to not see through it, and he kind of realized that, you know, he's not a very good sprinter, so that they don't need to end up and just sort of save their energy. But Sugimoto's actually more of an endurance fighter as it is, so he does well with like however, they end up seeing through it like in the nick of time. They realize that they can catch up, and so they end up blasting right past him. Sugimoto gets some very strong words of encouragement from Maizumi to keep riding forward, gets a nice strong pat on the back, and Sugimoto's trying to catch up, but he doesn't. It's like he gets past it over the hill, and anyway, so the pink car drives on ahead of Sugimoto because it's first years, and first years, Kokuragi is very cocky at the moment because, you know, they managed to pass Sugimoto and he was their only real competition, and they catch up to him, and Teshima says to him, hey, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, we can fulfill our goal, well, like, I'll fulfill my promise to you, but keep in mind that the race isn't over yet. And who should come up but Sugimoto, along with his younger brother, Sadatoki, I believe. Right. And what we discover is, you know, Sugimoto had stopped riding for a little bit, but he got inspired by the appearance of his younger brother. And now it's, as usual, one final sprint to the very end, with all four people just deadlocked.
Yeah, so your tone was somewhat indicative of what you thought of this episode.
Yeah, sorry, I try not to let it outside of Minami Kamakura, but who cares?
Yeah, it slipped in.
Yeah, it kind of slipped in there. I think I'm going to speak for both of us here. I think Yowamushi Pedal has officially lost me.
Yeah, I mean, it's relative for me. So it's an issue of it's an issue of expectations. It has lost me in the fact that it has not lived up to my relatively high expectations, because I have good memories of Yao Pei. It was one of the series that got me back into sports.
Right.
So I have relatively high expectations for it. There's other shows where I have no expectations, and they don't. So this is still better than Minami Kamakura.
Right.
This is better than
it's
Days.
Better.
It's better than a lot of sports anime,
right.
But it's not as good as it should be, judging by its reputation and.
Right. And I think that's kind of the bait here. This is a series that is really reaching for like I kind of skipped over this, but there's this moment where Kobaragi is going into his own motivations for no real reason outside of the fact because he's talking with Don Chiku, and just all of a sudden they start reminiscing about Kobaragi like in middle school racing, and it's like it just sort of felt like they were trying to stretch out the episode to hit 20 minutes because they need to end on that big climax. Yeah, that final sprint. And it's like, I realize that, you know, you could say that this is based on manga, you know, I'm still going to stick with the filling out space, in that case, just filling out pages to hit for the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's based on the original manga directly, like, you chose how to adapt it, you know?
Right.
You don't have to, it's not like the manga tells you how long each scene needs to be.
Right, exactly. And it feels like it's just reaching now we have some reason to root for Kobaragi. Trying to get invested in this race, and it's like, I really do not care about Kishimoto at all. But anyway, going along those lines, I believe there was something that you really wanted to discuss here.
Well, yeah, so it's Teshima, who, by virtue of becoming captain, has attained the authority of being all-knowing, you know.
Right.
So he just says, he pronounces things, and then they all come true, because he's the captain. So when the two first years first joined, and they said, hey, can we be on the Inner High squad if we get first and second? He said, yes. And we brought this up last week, like, that can't possibly happen because he's not going to bump any of the established members. It comes up again in this episode, and Onoda is like, wait, are you serious? You're going to drop someone? He says, yes. But then he clearly, you know, he's already made a list of the 5 people he knows will be on the team, and he only needs to... And he says that this race is to determine who will get the 6th slot. So he simultaneously says 2 people can get on the team, but only 1 person can get on the team. So it was just very confusing. But like, what's gonna happen is after the fact, he's gonna say like, I was only saying in order to motivate Sugimoto or whatever to fill that last slot. I knew that those 2 first years could never win. I just needed Sugimoto to realize his potential. Or whatever, like, all-knowing line he had, which, by what authority does he have this? Like, he wasn't even on the team last year. Why are we treating him like he's the expert?
Right. I mean, I guess to be fair, Kinjo did it to him, so, you know.
Yeah. Maybe something just happens when you become captain. You also become all-knowing about how everyone you've ever met will ride a bike.
And can I just also point out real quick how dumb it is to, like, just suddenly... Because the series doesn't really bother to correct Onoda's assumption here, but, you know, whatever. Like, the assumption here is that Onoda is going to be the one who loses out on his spot. Or at least, according to Onoda. Teshima does nothing to correct that stance. And I just like, Teshima, are you seriously considering getting rid of Onoda because of some bet you made with the first year?
Yeah, I mean, and why communicate that? Like, is that what a good leader does, where he makes people free, including the person who just won the Inter-High for you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody essentially credits Onoda for winning that, because even, like, Hakone's like, look, we did everything right, we just didn't plan for, like, a free fighter like Onoda. And Teshima, it's like, are you seriously, like, going... It's like you kind of mentioned there, it's like, even if he wasn't actually planning on getting rid of Onoda, why didn't he say anything to calm their nerves?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there was a couple other things before we move on from this silly episode that I want to bring up. One is that, so you brought it up earlier that Sugimoto passed the 2 first years, and they sort of underestimated him. But then, minutes after they'd been passed, they think to himself, Kobaragi thinks to himself, rather, wait, his legs. And he just sits there, like, it's not like he's looking at them. He's just thinking about them minutes after the fact. He says, like, wait, his legs are strong. Those are the legs of an endurance racer. Like, why did you think of that now? And, like, how could you possibly do it by looking at his legs that
right, like, no, never mind. Those are the legs of an endurance fighter. It's like, you know, sometimes sports anime does do that. And you have, like, to sell that type of line, you have to give me details beyond just, he has the legs of an endurance rider, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to describe the musculature, about what it is about that, in order to be able to sell a line like that.
Also,
yeah, no, just his legs are strong.
I thought it was funny that Danchiku's special ability is not that special. It's just that he rides fast and screams.
Like every other character in this series.
Exactly. They're trying to make it like he's crazy because, like, oh, he's so calm and quiet, except for when he really lets loose. It's
right,
like,
but it's
that's how many times do we have to see that?
Right, and it's like, you know, we got a very satisfying character who already does that in Ashikiba. You know, Ashikiba's a very fun character because of how crazy and eccentric he gets during it. You know, he has this whole team. Yep. Here, Danchiku is just like, oh, okay, he just sort of...
Exactly. But it's not going to matter because they're not going to be on the team. And of all the possible interesting things they could have done with their one extra team member, they're going to add the throwaway joke character and try and make him serious.
Yeah, like, real quick, I just want to throw out, like, it is possible to have a character who is mostly completely a gag, who is also a serious character. Like, that is... The problem is that Tsukamoto spent the entire first 2 seasons of the series being a throwaway gag character, being like... his recurring gag was, he knows everything about cycling, somebody says something that shows that he does not know everything about cycling, and he makes a kind of a nervous face.
Right.
Like a, sort of thing. That has been his entire character. Now all of a sudden you're trying to tell us that he actually has this very deep friendship with the Maizubi, that he desperately, like, he has this whole background with the Maizubi, and that, you know, he needs to be the one to support him. And it's like, where is this coming from? This could be so much better, and
speaking of things that are better, how about March comes in like a line?
Sure thing, that's all you, buddy.
Okay, so this is the final episode of Season 1 of March Comes Into Like a Lion, episode 22.
Right.
Like every episode pretty much before, it's divided into 2 halves. The first half, Ray is back at high school, starting second year of high school, and he's just trying to fit in. He's got a new class. He doesn't really have any friends. He notices his old teacher, Hayashida, and he sort of looks wistfully at him and, well, you know, it's too bad. It's not like he's and Hayashida accosts him. You know, he sort of runs up and he says, like, what are you doing? Like, you can't just walk away from me looking like that. You know? And they end up eating lunch together. And Hayashida asks him something. He says, like, did you really come back to high school just so that you could eat lunch by yourself on the stairs? And he's like, oh my god, you know, like, someone's penetrating me, someone's breaking through my isolation. And Hayashida asked him to create a shogi club. You know, what better way for you to start making friends than doing something you love, something that Hayashida loves, with other kids, basically. Of course, no one wants to join the shogi club because it's a game for old men and no one understands it, but they manage to combine the shogi club, which is just Ray, with the after-school.
Okay, so I think I just like to dive right in. Okay, cool. So this is now okay. This was episode 11. So we get the wrap up on the race between Danchiku, Kobaragi, Tsukimoto, and Sadashi. Basically, there's a very quick finish. Eventually, Kobaragi breaks away, and he races on ahead. And it's a duel between Kobaragi and Sugimoto. Kobaragi barely manages to pull out the front and wins. There's a nice little scene where Sugimoto doesn't realize that he actually lost, but he eventually does accept it. Imaizumi kind of tries to Donchiku is being left behind because naturally. And so we kind of cut to a scene at a university. We find out that Arikita and Kinjo are actually going to the same university, and they're still in the same biking club. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We cut back to Kobaragi and Onoda. They're on some one-on-one training, and Kobaragi has some issues with Onoda because Onoda is not that, he's still kind of very weak and passive. But he discovers that Onoda really is just a monster at climbing, and we discover that next year's Inter High will have a slope that's twice as big as last year's, so naturally Onoda is going to be pivotal to their strategy.
Right.
Cool. So, what were your impressions, Matt?
Well, I guess my big issue is that they never addressed what Teshima was thinking. I know we've been talking about this for weeks, but it really frustrated me because with the logic that we came to last week was saying, like, okay, so what's going to happen after this race is Sugimoto's going to win, Teshima's going to explain how he knew all along that Sugimoto would win, and that's why he promised the other two that he would put them on the team, because he needed to motivate them to make it a good race so that Sugimoto could evolve or whatever.
Right.
But that's not what happened. All that happened is that, Sugimoto got second and Kobaragi won. And so they said, like, well, I only said that if the two of you got first and second, I'd let you on the team. So since Sugimoto beat Donchiku by a couple meters, Kobaragi has to be on the team. And I don't have to have a hard conversation with Aoyagi or something. But they don't even take it that far. Like, he never admits... there's no cut to a scene of Teshima being like, I don't know what I would have done if they'd won. Some way of admitting that was a stupid plan that almost backfired that he would have had to back out of.
He's going along with it, like, way too easily. Just like, oh, okay, well, I guess cool. I guess that worked out for us. Like, cool, awesome. So, Sugimoto got second, so I have an excuse just to put Kobaragi on the team now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. And what was the point of making such a big deal of them both being on the team when immediately after he wins, they're like, you're fine with Donchiku not being on the team, right? And he's like, yup.
He's like, yeah, I'm cool with it, whatever.
And like, then why was it a big deal in the first place?
Yeah, okay, so I just want to point out something. I've been hyping this up for a while. There has been, between you and me, there was a line that absolutely blew me away in this episode, in all the wrong ways.
Okay.
I forget who actually said it. I believe it was Imaizumi.
Okay.
But because I think he's explaining to Onoda about why Kobaragi and Donchiku have a major weakness against Sugimoto. And this is the exact quote here. Since the SS members are determined through racing, they've never understood what it's like to race with friends. I have never seen a single issue in this series ever be resolved by anything but a race.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Not only that, immediately afterwards, as Kobaragi and Donchiku are racing together, Donchiku, like, valiantly pushes Kobaragi forward and says, it's okay, buddy, you take this one. Like a friend would do.
Exactly, because they're friends.
Because they are friends.
Yeah, like, what gets me is that, yeah, everyone competes to be on the Inter-High team. Like,
right. This is a race right now to determine who's on the Inter-High team.
Yeah, I mean, that happened last, in the first season at the training camp, when Imaizumi himself competed against Teshima.
Right.
To be on the team.
Teshima, right now, you were kicked off the team, or off the Inter-High squad.
Yeah.
Because you lost the race. you can't just back off on that now and say, oh, they only know racing, they don't know friendship. Racing is all that matters to you people!
Yeah, also, like, what... I don't totally understand why Sugimoto is racing with the power of friendship. Like, is his relationship with his brother really that substantively different that it affects his racing?
Right, like, it's like, oh, he has to live up to the expectations of his brother because he's not a very good racer, but he needs to impress his brother, and so...
I don't know if there was even that much logic.
I feel like I think that they said something along that line, because, like, Sugimoto has a bit of an internal monologue there, talking about, like, it's like, I've never actually been that great, but, my brother has always thought I was, basically thought I was the son, and so, I kind of have to live up to that for him. Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure he had, like, a little internal monologue.
Yeah, it didn't leave much of an impression, though.
Right. And that is...
But yeah, Danchika did push Kobaragi forward, and there was one line I wrote down from that where he said, Issa, which I guess is Kobaragi's given name, right. I want to see you frolic like a child. What does that mean? And what a weird thing for a 16-year-old boy to say to
another 16-year-old boy.
Yeah, like, I just feel like that's not something people say. Like, hey man, I just really want to see you frolic.
Oh, like a child. It's like, I guess I can see what's going on there. He really wants to see that, that sort of boisterous youth in him. Like, he's that excited. There was another thing I was thinking about watching this episode, which was, there was this misunderstanding between Onoda and Kobaragi, because Kobaragi didn't realize, there was kind of this joke that Kobaragi didn't recognize Onoda because he was being all wimpy. He wasn't what he was expecting. Kobaragi saw Onoda at the Inner High the previous year. The entire reason he came to Sohoku was because he saw the Inner Eye. He was specifically inspired by Onoda. How does he not know what Onoda's like?
Yeah, and I mean, that carries over to the end of the episode, where he gets frustrated because Onoda was, like, not masculine enough or something when he came to pass a message at his class, and he was visibly upset with Onoda, thinking to himself, why is Onoda so undignified? That's like what he thought of, like, oh, he's not a dignified senior. Like, who? I mean, I guess clearly I don't understand, but for him to be visibly upset and take it out on Onoda that he's not a dignified senior.
Right, and it's just like
it seems cheap. It seemed made up.
Because it's like because we have to have the scene showing like, no, Onoda's actually really good. He wins over Kobaragi in the end through his fast climbing, because that's really all there is to it. There is one other... I don't want to be, like, super negative about it. I do want to point out I did kind of like the fact that Sugimoto didn't realize he had lost. And it's kind of... but it's more on the basis that... how has nobody ever realized that they've never lost before when it's that close?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, why is he the first person in this show? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like, all the time they have these sprints where you win by, like, half a tire length. And they were like, I know. Like,
no,
would you really be looking at the other guy and able to tell?
Yeah, like, exactly. It's like, I did kind of appreciate that we had kind of, they didn't earn it because, who cares about Sugimoto, but I did appreciate the fact that they tried to have a dramatic scene based around that.
Well, can I ask you one? Well, I think we have two more things before we move on.
Okay.
The first being, why didn't they just wait until the training camp? Like, clearly, that's the thing. Teshima didn't. Maybe I guess he said this was like for the 6th slot in the team, but he didn't have to say that, and he could easily have said that was too close. It could have gone either way. Like,
Kobaragi specifically mentions, like, if this had been like just a couple meters shorter, like Sugimoto would have won, and it's like, why are you just picking your team based off of just this single race?
I know, it seems like really bad leadership. where you make a decision that monumental based, and there were so many influencing factors. Like you're not putting them in an environment where they're independent. Sugimoto raced against them for the most part when they were as a team, and he was by himself. They never addressed that. They never addressed the fact that, like, well, Onoda tries to address the fact, but they don't acknowledge it as legitimate that last year they didn't pick a team until training camp. So what's the reasoning for having to do it all now?
Because they say it's like, oh, well, because I want to make sure that we get an inner high team prepared now so that we can, like, focus on training for it. But at the same time, you're not going to be doing any different training because, I mean, I'm sorry to say, you're riding bikes. There's not really any sort of different training you can do right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they want to work as a team of 6 and work on their teamwork. Yeah,
like,
but
like, I've never really bought the whole like we ride as a team thing. But anyway,
and that's the thing. I don't see why it has to be those 6, because what happens when one of you gets injured before the interhigh? Why wouldn't you train as a group of 8 and then have 2 people that are, you know, designated as subs after the training camp, but the 8 of you practice together because it could be any 6 of the 8 of you if people get injured.
Yeah,
like that seems like something people would do in order to be prepared and not have someone just show up on the team. You know, if Onoda gets injured a week before the race and they just put Sugimoto on the team and he hasn't worked with them at all, like that's a disaster. No real team would do this. that's what gets me.
Yeah, no, I get that.
The last thing I want to say about this episode, I need to move on, is that I don't hate Yoapeida. I wish it could be more than it is, but I did have this moment in the episode when we cut to college and we saw Arakita and Kinjo together.
Right.
And they had a little moment talking about how they're going to race together for their college. And I thought, you know what? I'd rather watch that show.
You know, it's more interesting because we have Kinjo, you know, who we've seen as being the stoic leader. All of a sudden now we have to see him again as a newbie.
Yeah,
you know, it's a more interesting aspect, and it's something that Ice Shield 21 implies.